All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going on an incredible journey. We're going to shrink ourselves down, way smaller than the eye can see, to explore the most fundamental unit of you, of me, of every single living thing on this planet. We're talking about the cell.
Okay, so here's a weird one for you. Ever wonder what a city, a factory, and you all have in common? I know, it sounds like the beginning of a bad joke, right? A busy city, some high-tech factory, and a person. What on earth could possibly tie all those things together? Well, the answer is actually way cooler and more profound than you'd think.
It's this. They're all made of smaller specialized parts that have to work together in this incredibly complex system. You know, a city has power plants, roads, city hall. A factory's got its assembly lines and shipping docks. And you're built from trillions upon trillions of tiny, living units. Those parts are called cells.
So, let's explore this world inside you. But to really get it, we've got to jump back in time a bit. Back to a time when this whole microscopic world was, well, totally invisible. A hidden universe just waiting for someone to find it.
So, the whole thing started with just a glimpse. Back in 1665, a guy named Robert Hooke was looking at cork through an early microscope and saw these tiny, boxy structures. He called them cells because they look like little rooms. Then, a few years later, another scientist found these teeny tiny swimming things in pond water. He called them animalcules. Super cute. But piecing it all together took a while. It wasn't until the 1830s that a couple of scientists, Schleiden and Schwann, had this huge realization. All plants and animals are made of cells. And then, in 1855, Rudolf Virchow saw cells dividing and added the final piece. All cells have to come from other cells.
And all those amazing discoveries boiled down to what we now call the cell theory. This is like the foundation of all modern biology, and it's actually super simple. It's got three main rules. Rule 1, if it's alive, it's made of cells, period. Rule 2, cells are the most basic unit of life. You can't get any more fundamental than that. And Rule 3, you can't just whip up a cell out of nothing. All cells come from pre-existing cells. That's it. Those three rules basically run the show for all of life.
Okay, so all life plays by these same rules. But, and this is a big but, not all life uses the same blueprint. Turns out, evolution came up with two fundamentally different designs for a cell.
So, on one side, you've got your prokaryotic cells. Think of these like a super efficient studio apartment. Everything's just in one room. Simple, no fuss. Their DNA is just kind of floating around in a specific area. Then, on the other side, you have the eukaryotic cells. These are the giant, sprawling mansions of the cell world. They are way more complex. They have a central office, the nucleus, to keep the all-important DNA safe. And they have tons of other little rooms with walls. We call them organelles. And each one has a very specific job to do. So, who is in which category? Well, pretty much all bacteria, like E. coli, are prokaryotes. But almost everything else you can think of that's alive, humans, frogs, trees, mushrooms, even a little amoeba, we're all eukaryotes. So for the rest of this journey, we're going to focus on us, the complex eukaryotes. And really, the best way to wrap your head around one of these complex eukaryotic cells is to imagine it's a tiny, bustling factory. A factory that's working around the clock, 24/7, just to keep you alive.
Let's look at the factory floor plan. Every part of a factory has its match inside the cell. The main office, where the CEO is, that's the nucleus, holding the master blueprints. The assembly line workers, those are the ribosomes. The conveyor belt system that moves everything around, that's the endoplasmic reticulum. Then you've got packaging and shipping, that's the Golgi apparatus. The power generators keeping the lights on are the mitochondria. The secure front doors are the cell membrane. And of course, you've got a recycling center, the lysosome, to handle all the waste.
So let's start at the top, the main office, the nucleus. This is the absolute control center of the whole operation. It doesn't do the physical work itself, but it holds the most precious thing in the entire factory, the master blueprints, the DNA. It's the DNA that tells everyone else what to do, what to build, and when to do it. Okay, so how does this factory actually make something, like a protein? Well, it's a beautifully coordinated assembly line. First, inside the main office, the nucleus, a working copy of the DNA blueprint is made. Think of it like a photocopy. Step 2, that copy leaves the office and goes to an assembly worker, a ribosome, which reads the instructions and builds the protein piece by piece. Step 3, the brand new protein gets put on the conveyor belt, the endoplasmic reticulum, for transport. And finally, step 4, it arrives at the packaging department, the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi processes it, sorts it, and packages it up to be shipped out. It's an amazing coordinated dance. But, a factory isn't just about making stuff. To keep running, it needs two other absolutely critical things: power and maintenance. You need a steady supply of energy, and you need a good cleanup crew. So let's see how the cell handles that.
All right, meet the mitochondria. These are the power generators for the entire factory. These amazing little organelles take the fuel from the food you eat and convert it into pure energy, a molecule called ATP. You can just think of ATP as cellular cash or gasoline. It's the currency that pays for literally everything the cell does. And here's a super cool fact. Mitochondria have their own DNA, completely separate from the main DNA in the nucleus. It's a clue from their deep, ancient past, when they might have been their own separate organisms.
So that leads to a pretty serious question, right? If these mitochondria are the power plants for trillions of these little factories inside us, what happens when the power goes out?
Yeah, the consequences are devastating. Take something like Lee disease. This is a disorder caused by faulty mitochondria that just can't produce enough energy. And this cellular power outage hits the most energy-hungry parts of our body the hardest, places like the brain and our muscles. It causes severe neurological and muscular issues, and it's just a tragic reminder of how absolutely critical these tiny power generators are for our survival.
Okay, so we got power. Now, what about the cleanup crew? Meet the lysosome. This is the cell's recycling and waste disposal center. They're basically little bags filled with powerful digestive enzymes. Think of them as the factory's demolition team. Their job is to break down old, worn-out parts into bits and pieces that can be reused. They also act as security, destroying any invading bacteria or viruses that manage to sneak past the front door.
So, you can see where this is going. What happens if the recycling system breaks down? What happens when the cellular trash just starts piling up?
Well, this leads to another devastating disease called Tay-Sachs. It happens when the lysosomes are faulty because they're missing just one single critical enzyme. Without that enzyme, a certain type of fat, a lipid, can't be broken down and recycled. So this cellular garbage just builds up and up until it becomes toxic, especially in the nerve cells of the brain. And the damage is catastrophic.
Okay, so we've seen how a single factory works. We know how it makes things, how it gets its power, and how it stays clean. Now, it's time to zoom out. Let's see how trillions of these little factories all work together to build you. It really is all about layers of organization. You start with the organelles, the little factory parts all working together to make a functioning cell. But it doesn't stop there. Groups of similar cells band together to form tissues. You get muscle tissue, nervous tissue, connective tissue. And those tissues are literally the fabric that builds our organs and eventually our entire body. But wait a minute. How do we end up with all these different kinds of tissues? I mean, we all start out as just one single cell, right? That cell divides into what are called stem cells, which are kind of like blank slates. The magic is a process called cell differentiation. Imagine a brand new employee showing up at the factory on their first day. They get their job assignment, that's differentiation. Specific instructions or genes inside that stem cell get turned on or off. And that's what tells it, okay, you're going to be a heart cell or you're going to be a bone cell. Each one gets a special job. And that leaves us with one last, just mind-blowing idea to think about. Every single cell in your body, your skin cells, your brain cells, your liver cells, they all have the exact same complete set of DNA blueprints, the full instruction manual. So the big question, the really profound question is this: how does the cell that's holding the instructions to build an entire person know to only read the one chapter it needs to do its very specific job? How does a brain cell know not to become a skin cell? Answering that is one of the biggest, most exciting frontiers in all of science. Thanks so much for taking this journey with me.